Welcome, my friend Kevin Rawls, to the Brookhill Podcast, Life, Legacy, and Leadership.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good to be here.
Glad to have you on our podcast today. And I want to, for our very large, small audience, talk about who you are. You are Dr. Kevin Lee Rawls,
Yes.
Dean of the Online School of Communication and the Arts at Liberty University.
Correct.
Nailed it.
Yes, yeah, doctor, but not the kind that helps people.
That's my favorite time. That's my favorite thing that you say. We have Steve Robert, doctor, who helps people.
Yes.
And then Kevin, who doesn't.
Yes, unless the prescription is write 2 papers and call me in the morning. I'm of little
then
use.
You can help them.
In an actual emergency, I would be of no use.
I love that. I love that. But you know, I always say the most important thing is that we worked Brookhill together.
Yes.
And you worked all summer from 1996 to 2000. You were what we call a legacy counselor, 4 years or more, name on the wall. You were an AC your first summer. Then you ran your bunkhouse, the Walker bunkhouse.
The Walker bunkhouse was my house.
For 4 summers. I was in there with you, visited a few times, AC in your bunkhouse. I remember you were the AC my first JC summer. That was a lot of fun, and then coming on there, which funny story, we can just go ahead and jump into the funny story.
Okay.
That summer when I was at JC, you were an AC. It was Camp 1. It had just rained. This is where you get your your Sadie Hawkins hoedown name.
Yes.
It had just rained, and Cato says,
the camp director at the time.
Yes.
Brian Cato, legend. It just rained. He grabs me and all the guy JCs. He's like, all right, guys, we need to, and in my desire to be as good as possible, it was one of those things. You ever seen like the football players where they turn to run before they catch the ball?
Yes.
Right? And that's what I was doing in my brain. He said, we need to go get, he said, Rawls, go get the squeegee off the tennis courts. As soon as I heard the word "go" out of his mouth, I began just moving towards. I don't remember which direction it was. Probably the wrong, but just I'm going. So all I heard was "squeegee off tennis courts." So listen, he's a camp director. I don't know what's going on. So I go up there, and at the time that's where we kept the squeegee because we had to get it off the tennis courts where, they're outdoor where it rains. So I was like, all right. So my job is to get the tennis courts cleaned off. Well, that wasn't really his intent. He wanted me to get the squeegees and bring them back so that we could get the wagons cleaned off. So after a couple of minutes, he's like, where's Rawls? And him and the other JCs look up, and I'm about halfway done squeegeeing off the tennis courts.
Yes.
And all of a sudden I hear I'm head down, I'm pushing. And I hear this raucous laughter of like, what are you doing? I was like, squeegee off the tennis? No, bring them. Oh, okay. So from that point on, Squeege was my nickname, my hoedown name, my all the things, and so I was Squeege from that point on. So
it was so fun.
There's worse monikers that for sure. So I'll take it.
But in fairness, you were really squeegeeing off those tennis courts. I mean, you had gotten it done. It was impressive.
Yeah.
So like if we were rating that,
if it was 10 out of 10 on that. It was a 5-star.
Yeah.
Which
I think I was doing tennis, so me and Mev appreciated.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
you are welcome.
That's really.
Yeah, I didn't. But so I learned later on. Let the instructions, be fully absorbed. Catch the ball before you start to run.
It's a good call.
There you go. Life lesson right there.
One of the things you did at camp is, you played the guitar. You were in a couple of bands in college, maybe / high school, or maybe it was 2 in college. I remember Key to Life. I remember the band.
Yeah.
I remember you cut a CD.
Yeah. Was in a couple of worship bands and other bands in high school.
College. That was right around the time that David Crowder band was getting big. Steve Crowder worked Brookhill.
Yeah, I worked with Steve here. Yeah.
And Steve would bring us Dave's CDs that he was cutting. I remember listening to the first one, going, "Okay, yeah, he's onto something there." Yeah. And then you brought your CD, and then Dave hit the big one, the Love Is Loud, or the one that just really went big. And I thought, oh, maybe Kevin's going to go big. You know what I'm saying? So,
No, not in the cards. I think there's a talent gap there that we might have to that might explain some of
in
that.
the beard, I think.
Yeah. No, I loved playing. I really, cut my teeth on worship, leading worship, and playing the guitar through the summers here. And I learned so much about leading worship, and very simply, right? Because you've just got an acoustic guitar, maybe two acoustic guitars, and it's just you and them, and you're trying to invoke a sense of worship, a sense, a type of connection in the spirit to that. And so I learned a ton. Just played, because you wake up and you're playing devos.
Yep.
And then council ring you're playing.
Lunch.
And then,
Yep.
And then you're playing at
Vespers at night. Yep.
At night. And at the time, we were doing the serenade. So you're playing then. So it was just all day, every day, and I loved it. I loved all of it. It was so much fun. I loved being able to do that, and learned a whole lot about playing in with bands, but also just leading worship. And so I was able to translate that into when I went on into college, and then became a worship leader at a church back in college, and at when I graduated. And so it was just a big part of who I was, and what gave me a really strong sense of what my role was here at the camp. So that was really good for me to kind of have that.
I remember you talked about how important that was for you here. You felt like some people are funny, some people could tell stories, some people may have been good at this or that. Music was the way you connected with campers.
Yeah.
It's what the Lord used in you to draw campers to you, and you be able to share with them.
Yeah. I wasn't ever, my personality is not very, I'm not gregarious. I'm not necessarily extroverted and really outgoing compared to others, right?
Right.
I mean, compared to a Simon Knighton, compared to a John McCants, who can't not smile,
right?
and just is able just to connect on a whole different ways. That really allowed me to have a role and to have a place in the body and in the team, that I felt I could add value and could be contribute something unique.
Yep.
And I was, led the music activities, and was always, available to do whatever we needed with the music. And so that was really fun, and I really got a lot out of it. I'm glad I had that.
Yep.
Through those years, to be able to, contribute in that way.
I always tell our counselors now, and even people who aren't working at Brookhill, that God is looking for willing people, and He equips willing people. And for me, when I got here, I didn't feel like I was good in front of crowds. I didn't feel, I definitely was not musical. I'd never touched a guitar, but all of you guys had one, and I thought that was the coolest thing. And so after my first summer, I bought one, and then Steve Sexton said to me, "Hey man, I think you're going to be here a while, so I want you to play guitar." And there were guys way better than me, and I don't even know what you were thinking. I don't even know if I want to know what you were thinking. No. When Steve said, "Hey, this guy David who can't play guitar is going to help you lead Devos." You've gone from Steve Robert to Steve Crowder to David Pate. And I even have this picture. It's the most horrible, blurry. I think they actually have it. We can throw it on the screen. It doesn't make it any better, but it's all I got. I guess no one cared to take pictures of us. But here's me playing the guitar with you, leading devotions.
Oh, that's awesome.
And appears to be 2000, may have been one of our last summers, so maybe I actually could play at that point. But the thing is, I think God knows what we need.
Yeah.
And for me, I wasn't good at guitar, and so that never got any better. That was never a thing. But to be up there next to you, I learned how to lead a crowd. Because that's what I felt like you were really good at. And I learned to play off your cues. And then we got into comedy. We started.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when counselors would come off and they would say, "Hey, y'all were really genuinely funny." and I thought, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I think I began to learn, because Steve Sexton was always funny. And I began to learn. I think God knew I needed that development in order to do. But I think that's what God does. Do you feel like, you saw God do some of those things where He put you in places, maybe through camp or whatever, that has just forced some things out of you that was in there, but you never had that mechanism to, use it?
Yeah. No, it was a really good excuse to invest in something right? And it was a good opportunity to invest in something. And I did enjoy it. When you came to start to play, I did enjoy it, but not because it was a, not because you were such a musical contribution, and neither was I, right? It was because I just enjoyed being up there with you.
Sure.
I liked you as a person. And I think that actually goes into more of it than anything else.
Yep.
And I think that's what people saw. And I think that's what we enjoyed.
Right.
I just enjoyed being up there with you.
Right.
Like I even if it doesn't matter if what the music could have been.
Yep.
If I would have spent more time practicing, or
Right.
that really wasn't the point. The point was about enjoying and making the most of that opportunity and being ourselves, trying to add value to that, trying to speak into their lives, trying to make the kids feel comfortable worshiping.
Yep.
Right, because some of that was new. So this is almost like they're having to learn a skill, and the staff members helping them know that we're all having fun. The kids are having fun,
Yep.
and the staff are having fun, and that makes it all that much more enjoyable for everybody. So yeah, I do think that I was able to. It's funny to not be an extrovert, but at the same time be comfortable in a high-profile situation like that. It's kind of interesting. But again, that's just the Lord, doing what He does and taking our 5 loaves and 2 fishes and making it something that benefits a lot more people
Absolutely.
than it would have if we hadn't have even tried.
Yep.
To step into that and I'm gonna try to do this. I'm gonna try to be this, and so. Praise the Lord for the opportunity.
Yeah.
That's all I can really say.
Well, it meant the world to me, playing with you, playing with Robert, playing with Crowder, up in Council Ring. And then, when Sexton said, hey, you're going to be the 3rd guitar in Serenade, and there were moments where I would just go silent as I was playing because I was like, no, I'm way off, and just learning how to do that. And it just, I don't think people realize what it means to those younger than them. To get an opportunity to lead beside them. And I think you grow to a point where you just kind of get comfortable in your leadership, but you don't realize those rookies coming up, and that's why I tell them today, value those JCs, brag on them because they've got a knot in their stomach, and you guys were my hero. To be able to play with y'all and to be up on stage, I don't know. It gave me so much confidence, and I don't know if we realize what we do for other people in our leadership.
Yeah, and especially when you're younger, it's so because you're just trying to keep your head above water.
Right.
It's like I'm trying to not embarrass myself up here, and so to take the time to look by it's tough.
Yep.
To get out of your own head.
Yep.
Enough to do that, but you also got to think you put in the work.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
Nobody practiced for you.
Right.
You invested the time, and so I think you were able to reap the efforts of that because you were always great and you were always cool, and it's just like this is just a skill set that you can learn.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Just the chords and that's fine.
Yep.
But the desire to bless people, the desire to engage in worship, the desire to do that, you had all that already.
Yeah.
So the skill set was, the motive is the one thing you can't give somebody.
Sure.
And I know that this is the life of legacy leadership, but so in the context of leadership, you can give somebody you can give somebody training. You can teach them skills. You can't make them want to do it. Motive,
So good.
Motive is that thing that they either have it or they don't, and I don't know how to give it to you. If you don't have it, if you don't want to do it, if you don't want to be here, if you don't want to invest, if you don't want to take the time to learn, then no amount of training is going to make up for that. And so what I always say, it's easier to turn a moving vehicle because you wanted to be there, you wanted to do a good job, and so you were going to do that. After that, it's just a matter of learning chords. Yeah. So you were going to do great, and you did. You did.
It's so funny. I think as a society, we have a difficult time with people they're not motivated to do it, but I have to almost do it for them. I think we have a very difficult time with letting people not be motivated. I just think that's interesting. I think sometimes we don't want to let people fail. You know, not to go in too much of a different direction, but I just thought, you know, as you were saying, you can't give people motivation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it's very difficult for us to allow people to not be motivated. It's like, no, I want this for you, so I'm going to help you get it, even if you don't want it for yourself. I don't know.
Yeah,
thought of that as you were talking.
And failure is, I mean, sometimes failure is the best teacher that we can have, and we don't want them to do it. But but to me, it's a matter of like, do you want to be here?
Right.
Do you want to be doing this? It's okay. I'm not mad at you if you don't.
Right.
Like, you don't have to.
Yep.
But if you do, then here we can get you where you need to go. We can train you. We can encourage you. So I'm just, that was a really interesting, kind of a thing that I've learned over the past, in various roles. I think you can train anybody that wants to be there.
Mm-hmm.
You
and I were talking about that even in relationships, marriage, what have you.
Yeah.
You can have two people that disagree on everything, but if they agree on the one thing, we want to make this work.
Yeah. Yes. If
you
have
can turn
two
anything
people
around,
who are committed to it continuing,
right,
and the relationship continuing,
right,
it will find a way through.
Yeah.
But but all it takes is one person in a relationship context at least to say, I don't want to do this, and no amount of effort on the other person can ensure it happens.
Yep.
So it is kind of again, that's one of those motivation things. I can't make you want to be,
so good.
You can't make that person want to be there.
Yep.
Even at no amount of, I mean, and obviously you could try to, encourage and inspire, but if it falls flat, then it's just, there's only so much you can do. It's limited, I would say.
One of my favorite questions to ask everybody who hangs out on the podcast is, what did camp mean to you? Because I know for all of us, it just meant so much just because of the way this camp is made up. Mm-hmm. It's so relational, and so you just have so many friendships and mentors and whatever. What can you even put into words what it meant to you, what it did for you at that time in your life? I know what it did for me in my life and what I needed from, the different, especially the men in particular that wore the red T-shirt, but what did it do for you? What did it mean to you leadership-wise or just development-wise or,
It's hard for me to overstate the impact.
Okay.
And I would say it breaks out part into three different ways and into three different areas that it has uniquely contributed. Because I came as a camper when I was, third grade.
Okay.
And all the way through to graduation. And as a camper, there was a couple of things. One that I remember how much, I remember thinking, you can be a Christian and have a blast. Just that concept. It seems easy to think about, but whenever you haven't seen it, whenever you haven't experienced it, you don't know that it's possible, right? I mean, you go to church, you do the church thing, but that's not every church is set up in a particular way for.
I felt like especially church culture in the 90s.
This was the 80s for me, so I'll go back a little bit.
Well, so 80s, 90s, but I don't know that I necessarily associated fun with Christ.
Yeah, and you could definitely make the argument that church is not necessarily supposed to be fun,
right?
Particularly, but it seemed interesting to me, or it seemed difficult to think, okay, well, what does it mean to be this in life, like outside of church? Like, what is life as a Christian like outside of church? And so it was almost like a glimpse into the kingdom. Like you could see what the kingdom of God could look like on earth, with various age groups all getting along, all being encouraging, and all having a blast, and while loving Jesus. Just a glimpse of the possibility of what the kingdom of God could look like on earth as a camper was incredible. And when you're a camper, there's the coolest people on the planet are high schoolers and college students.
Right.
And so to see them loving Jesus and worshiping Jesus and being cool to kids was like, this is not this is crazy. Because, one of the things that
I love this point that you make about this, by the way.
Oh, you see where I'm going here?
Yes. No,
like,
and I think I was going to, if you didn't go there, I was going to get you there.
Right.
But,
it's that if you've never seen a godly college student, how do you know what it looks like? How do you know what you can be? How do you know what's possible? How do you know what that should or could look like if you've never seen it? And most kids, that would grow up in church, you graduate high school and you go off to college and you lose them.
They're gone. They vanish. That's right.
Yeah, they might come back when
Right.
they get married and want to have kids.
Right.
And so you have, I know what what it can look like up to high school, and then I know what it looks like after they have kids.
That's right.
But then there's just this big gap
Right.
of I don't know what it looks like to serve Jesus.
Where do those people go? Because they were
from 18 to 25.
They're not in your church. You don't see them. They're gone.
Not, they're not in your church. And so to see them was like, okay, not only is it possible, but here's a version of this that I could emulate. So that was, for me, that was invaluable as a camper during those times. And so then transitioned to the next phase, which was as a counselor. And as a counselor, the ability to, or the demands of giving of yourself for a bigger calling and a bigger vision that's not about your comfort,
Right.
is important to have
Good.
in those times. But for me personally, it really helped establish my tribe. The guys that I knew loved Jesus and knew me and loved me anyway.
Yep. Absolutely.
Those guys like you,
Right.
David Pate, John McCants, Steve Roberts, Simon Knighton, Steve Sexton, these guys. We Joseph Patty,
Right.
Jeff Patty,
Yep.
Crossett, Joey, all these guys that we worked with, and even to this day, I can call those guys. Like
Right.
they gave me a tribe of guys who would encourage me to be more like Jesus,
Right.
and expanded out the influence
Yeah.
of godly young men that were my age. They were kind of co-laborers in this with me, and they were walking with me, and we were all walking together towards the kingdom in various roles and various capacities.
And we were trying to figure it out.
Right,
We-
but together.
Late night talks of, hey, what do you think about this? I don't agree with you. Okay. And we would disagree, agree, and you were just sharpening these.
Well, you're trying to figure it out.
That's right.
You don't
That's
know
right.
anything at that point, but you think you are. But
We
you're
felt
figuring it
like
out.
we did.
Well, yeah, because you're young. You think you do, but it was just the iron sharpening iron.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that
Yeah.
was. It
You
wasn't
have
with
any
this.
of the pictures of our hangout, Ty? We got some of our pictures here. I love that we've started getting back together. Of course, I do have the original hangout picture, Ty, if you've got that one.
Okay.
So this year, our daughters are working together on all summer staff.
Yes.
And I remember when we were done working, we attempted our first hangout. It was in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Nashville has become our place. It was the original place for us. And
Yeah.
I don't know, Ty, if you got that. Oh, no, this is the OG hangout. This right here.
Yeah, this is. Was this
This
last
is like
year?
my favorite picture.
We're about to launch a really good rap album.
Yes.
That's what this is.
I love this. It's on Jefferson Street.
Yes.
There's nothing but red lights on Jefferson Street.
Yeah, that's in Nashville, just hanging
That's
out
right.
there, of course, with the Dr. Pepper in hand. I try to avoid too many sodas throughout the year, but at those times in Nashville, I'd fall off the wagon.
That's exactly right. I love this. Is one of my favorite pictures. But do you have the old one, Ty, of when we were okay? Yeah, this is us hanging out. Yep. This is another one. Shanghai.
Playing Shanghai. There's John.
It's the game of all games.
Simon. This is either Steve Robert or Steve Sexton over here.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's blurred is probably Sexton because he's moving always.
We've gotten the same house there the past few years.
So fun.
What's cool is that about those is that, oh my gosh, it's amazing how we'll go for years. It's been 20 years since we worked together.
It's true.
And yet we still all love Jesus.
Yep.
We're still all trying the best we can to raise godly families.
Yep.
And we're still going through we're going through different challenges, but we're able to communicate. We don't just reminisce.
Right.
You know, at this point, we're kind of growing together, which is really cool.
And I think there's an issue if all we're talking about is the past.
Sure.
I think you talk about the thing. I think you talk about highlights, and if your highlights are 20 years ago, you need to work on some new game film. You know, and I love that we talk about what God is doing now, and you know what you're doing at Liberty, or what John is doing at the new church he's pastoring, what Simon's pastoring in New York, and what Robert's doing in L.A. And you know, of course, Steve Sexton at the house. You know, and I think that's important. I think that's what's drawn us to each other.
Yeah.
Is, you know, we didn't get stuck in 2000.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
we've continued to grow.
Yeah.
And I think that's what.
And it's
you know,
crazy because as we kind of, you know, reinvested back together, it was like God had been kind of doing similar stuff in us.
Yeah.
You know, and so we're like, oh yeah, I read that. Oh yeah, I listened to this. You know, we obviously have a text thread.
Yep. Oh
so
yeah.
we're in communication. Yeah, throughout the year, sending, you know, articles or memes or asking for prayer. One of the things that we started doing, and I appreciate this is that we, at least once, usually on like the Saturday while we're there, we all will get around the table and we go around and every person will say something that they would like us all to pray for.
Yep.
And it's crazy. It's amazing what they will say, and they will just unburden something that's been on their hearts. And we get up and we lay hands on each other.
Right.
And we pray for each other, and we lift that up to the Lord, and each person goes around and does that.
Right.
And boy, what a powerful thing to have guys that you've known.
And we're a
like
blubbering mess as we're talking.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's like we're at camp, you know, crying on Friday night.
Graduation
It's
night.
graduation. We're a blubbering mess.
With whipped cream,
Yes.
you know, down in our eye, you know.
But it's so important. But, you know, don't you think the enemy, Kevin, does not want a group of men being vulnerable with each other, being honest with each other, saying, I'm not perfect, and let me tell you about it so you can help me? I mean, don't you think the enemy wants to isolate us and has, especially with men?
Yes, I think isolation, I think the value of community is something that we don't really do very well in our society, is build good, strong communities. We are very isolationist. You know, we can go to work, we can go to our house, and everything is closed off. You know, we could maybe talk with a half a dozen people a day and about nothing of substance.
Right.
But what I've seen is, like you just said, the value of that open, honest encouragement, because we all deep down want to be known.
Sure.
You know, we all want people to know who we really are.
Right.
We're afraid, though, because we're afraid if I do that and they reject me,
Right.
then I'm going to be out.
Right.
You know, and I'm going to be alone. So we're afraid to kind of open up. But I think especially in the body of Christ, where, like I said a minute ago, people who know me and love me anyway.
Right.
People who know my weaknesses, my quirks, my inconsistencies, my hypocrisy, and I am all of those things.
Yeah.
And say, yeah, but I know you want to serve Jesus, and I know you want to love him, and so I'm going to help walk with you through this. And that's just invaluable. I don't know if you can, because we get so much of I've seen it so many times, especially as I've gotten older. Maybe you've seen it. People get off by themselves. They get isolated, and they get weird.
Every time.
They just get weird. They
Absolutely.
get off into some ideology or something, and all of a sudden you're like, what is going on with them? We need that community to help, you know, brush up against us and to knock off those, you know, sharp edges and be like, hey, don't say that.
Yep.
Nobody likes that.
It's so good. I heard,
you know, but you need that, because if you don't have those checks and balances, you don't function well amongst other people, and you get off and you get weird, and then it's like it's really hard for you to orient yourself properly in amongst community and group. And if you don't have other people, then you're only relying on yourself for to be able to see everything, and that is way too much pressure on our limited ability to see ourselves and the way we operate in the world properly without others.
Yeah.
So community is just, it's invaluable, but we have to be willing to be brave enough to step into that and it's not easy. But
So good.
when you can know somebody for 20 years, you can know they've seen me do stupid stuff.
Right.
I've apologized to you. I'm still feel guilty over like, yeah, I can't believe I said that to David. I can't, believe, 20-something years
Right.
ago,
Sure.
but
Sure.
you're like, hey, it's cool, and I'm like, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
You cannot buy that kind of relational capital,
Yeah.
and like we say, you can't make old friends.
Yeah, that's our favorite saying. You can't make old friends.
Yeah, it's just a result of going through the fire and having that experience together.
And I think it's because with old friends, the polished, perfect mask is impossible.
Yeah, they know you too well.
And so if you're still friends, it means forgiveness has happened.
Yeah.
It means people are willing to be genuine. And I like what you said, getting to know the real person. And I think, for me personally, I respect you more today than when I first met you, because when I first met you, I knew the image of you. But now I know the real you, and I think I have way more respect for the real you, if that makes sense. And you and I have talked about Enneagram and whatever, and I would have never thought you were a 6.
Right.
And the more I've gotten to know you, but the more you've been vulnerable, and share your heart, it goes, oh man, I love that guy even more. Versus the image of what I knew of him in high school and college, because we all put off an image. I put off an image, the jock, image, and you know what I'm saying? And we all put off, but that's not really who I am. That's just an image I put off, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. It's we take on this identity that we think helps us best operate in the world.
Come on.
Right? So it's like, this is who I'm going to be. This is my role. And so we hold on to that really tightly.
Right.
Because that's how we navigate through all of this thing. And that's how we try to orient ourselves in the culture and in the society around us, is by this image that we've crafted over years to be able to say, all right, this is who I am, that I do. And then because we're still young and, we protect that image, and anything that could possibly upset that, we try to push it away, so it keeps us from being authentic, keeps us from being, and
avoid those people that might call it out.
Yep. And so authenticity is just, that's not, I'm not sure that there comes a time where you have to understand how to be self-aware and to ask yourself, why am I thinking that way? Why am I acting that way? What things, what patterns, what thought patterns, identities have I brought on and developed that are not really true to who I am, or that I'm holding on really tightly to? And you mentioned the Enneagram, and it's a scientifically it's probably not, it's not up there with like the Big 5 personality tests.
Sure.
But I think anything that you can do that can help you move closer to self-awareness, that can help you move closer into understanding more about yourself, and that taking that journey inward can then also help you see that in other people.
Yep.
Because when you think, well, I'm a hypocrite, well, then it's not really that upsetting whenever somebody else is. You can kind of understand, we're all kind of, hypocritical. We are all, judgmental in some ways. We're all weak. We're all working this out. And so I think when you can begin that journey of self-discovery through whatever tool, the more effective it can be in helping you understand, like you said, myself, but also other people, and okay, that's probably why they do that. And they're just trying to make it work, man. They're just trying
creates
to
so much empathy.
Oh yeah. And so I think that's a really positive thing. And so praise the Lord, that He's allowed us to come through that and to experience that together and to give each other that grace. Because, and again, that's one of the great things about community that you have to have. You can't learn forgiveness in isolation.
That was really good. You can't learn forgiveness in isolation. It's tough to fight with a sibling when you're an only child. That's so good.
Yeah, no, there's no, you can know about the concept of it.
Right.
But maybe the technical definition of it. But until somebody has wronged you, and you have to be okay with them because you're going to see them, and you have to forgive them in your heart deeply, that only takes place in the context of a community.
Yep.
And so there are certain
So good.
things that God has baked in to community that when we start to pull away, if we're not intentional about moving in and about being vulnerable and about forgiving and working past those difficulties, that we miss out on in our growth and development as followers of Christ. They're not there.
I think it's the most difficult thing to become self-aware. It's the most difficult thing to be honest with yourself.
Yeah, stop lying to yourself.
Yeah.
Is the first thing.
And I know you and Rachel did such a good job. We had you teach on the Enneagram to the staff. I know you do some of that, at Liberty.
My wife, Rachel, yeah.
And, when you talked about a 3, I'm a 3.
Okay.
And you talked about how 3s are liars. I mean, they're selling some
That's
stuff.
really harsh. But
that is very harsh. But I started going, okay, now what am I being honest with that? And it causes you to really go, what's my motivation here? But it's spot on.
Yeah.
It's spot on. And I think you really start to be able to work with people when you can first understand yourself. Because then it's like, okay, I got a lot of flaws, so that's not that big deal because I know all mine. And I only see a few of theirs. And so I think it really creates the ability to go, all right, that's just one of the weaknesses of their strengths.
It's one of those things where I think when you can, the earlier you can start doing this, the better. And, it's not something that we really talk about. We try to talk about with our kids.
Sure.
Because we want them to start asking these questions now. But, it's almost like I kind of equate it to, have you ever had an allergy test?
Yes. Love this.
Right? So you have like they bring a bunch of allergens out and they just basically poke you with them. All these different things.
Who came up with this?
And then you look at what you react to. Tells you what's going on underneath the surface.
Wow.
Right? So it's like, why did that make me mad but not this? Or why did this upset me and make me sad but not this? And the chances are it's more likely what's going on inside of me than in what happened out there. So when we can look at our own responses, our own reactions, and say, this upset me a lot, and we can step back and almost treat ourselves as an object of study.
Sure.
Be like, why did I get so irritated at that? Like, because it probably says more about me than about the other person. And we can start being introspective and thinking about the things that we hold on to, the things that prompt responses from us. There might be some things that we have to work through and we have to dig up in order to really understand who we are, what's pushing us, what's motivating us. And again, the Enneagram as a scientific instrument, it's not up there with some of the other validated instruments in the realm of psychology. But as a practical tool, it at least starts answering those questions for us and helps us to point us in that direction of here's why you do this. And the motivation is probably not good. Right?
Yep.
Like I tend to identify as a 6 as an Enneagram, right? And that's the there's part of the fear triad. And always there's a lot of insecurity, and I use social relationships to help guide my forward progress, rather than myself. There's a lack of confidence in who I am. And so constantly being aware of, am I doing that? Am I trying to rely too much on this other person? Am I responding to this because I'm afraid this person will reject me? So it's constantly, thinking about that as what guides me, what motivates me, and ultimately putting those things, they're all misguided, misdirected aspects of us that are crying out for Christ. There's this part of us that really needs Christ, but we're trying to affix it in this other way. We're trying to develop these temporal coping mechanisms. We're trying to develop these tools that can help us when ultimately Christ is the path through that. But whenever you can start to understand at least what the problems are, once the diagnosis is properly identified, then you can develop a prescription to start trying to move out of it. And that's one of just the biggest things that you do. And I think the earlier you can start doing that, the better. I don't know. You try, but I'm not sure cognitively. If they can, at what age you can really start to be there to really do it well. It tends to happen. You see, it tends to happen more in middle age. People start to go, "How did I get here? Like, where where am I? How did I get here? And how do I keep doing this, or do I do something different?
Right.
You know,
Do I abandon this?
That's right. That's right. It's similar to an adolescence. It's almost like, okay, what am I going to be from here on out?
Right.
And adolescence does the same type of a thing. They're trying to identify. They're creating that identity, that character, that story that that they've played out, and they're like kind of trying to find that. And then you do it again. So it's really interesting how we go through these different phases of self-awareness and self-discovery. But you typically realize that most of the issues that you deal with are because of you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But once again, you can't learn this alone.
Right. Yeah.
You got to get
we have blind spots
around a community who will point things out. You know, obviously for me, Melissa's a big person who points out, you know, I know early on in our marriage, she blurted out, you know, she's a peacemaker, but she found that moment to blurt out, "You're the most selfish person I've ever met," you know. And I was thinking, you don't know everybody, but that's impressive. You know, I like to be the best, but you know, she began to point out, and it takes so long for you to realize, okay, I'm selfish, you know, and I think it's through life experience over time. That's the only way you can really understand who you are.
Yeah.
You know, you snap and you go, why did I snap at that thing?
Why that thing and not this other thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that was such a, you know, just explosive conversation I just had. I just, you know, how come I can't reel that? I need to reel that back. Why did I do that? You know, and I got to avoid that. But that it just takes time to get to that kind of stuff. But it just goes back to tribe.
Yeah. Well,
You
it's
know?
like, you may not remember this. When I was a kid, they had these rock tumblers. Did you ever see these? It was like this little motor on a base, and it was a canister.
Okay.
And you would put in the rocks, and you would then put in some kind of almost like a sand or silica, and then you put the cap on it, and then you turn it on, and it just turns like a drum, basically, and just turns. It was only as big as, you know, this cup. And it would turn, but it would take like days. And after a few days, these rocks in there would be shiny. But you can't do that with just one rock. You got to have a bunch of them in there.
They have to
hit against each other.
Wow.
To knock off these hard edges.
Wow.
And that's what you got to bump up against each other. You got to have some healthy conflict. You got to have some misunderstanding, some forgiveness, some repentance. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
Right.
You know. But again, and out the other side can come something that's way more useful, way more attractive to outsiders, because it was in conflict with others, and was able to knock off some of those edges. So that's ideally, I think, what the church and what our tribe should be, and say, like, we're not going anywhere. We're going to be here, but you got to get this thing figured out.
And I think that's what makes Brookhill so special. You know, is because you have those people that you meet, and you spend 3, 4, 5 summers together, and Brookhill tends to have those groups that just, you know, and I think that's the way that God intended it. And I think, you know, church has it, people have it in some friendships, but Brookhill has it kind of innate into what it does.
Yeah, and
you know,
and now coming on to the third phase of Brookhill's impact, which is now my kids coming as campers, and beginning to be counselors now, and having all of those things reinforced in them is a blessing to my family. And so Brookhill walks alongside us as we are trying to raise kids who, you know, love Jesus and can make an impact in this world for him. And it's just this reinforcement. And so they can come and they can hear the word and they can hear truth and they can see these examples and they can get mentors and they can develop their own tribe, and it makes the family stronger as a result of that. And so it's impacted me, I think now at this point you could say generationally.
Sure.
In a positive way, other than, you know, the little Brookhill isms that I've used as a parent for the past 18 years.
We were talking about those. What what are some of the things that have stood out to you from camp
You know, it's funny. I don't know how I would parent without camp, because you know, as soon as my kids say they're bored, the first thing out of my mouth is, "Well, only boring people get bored." You know that, right? And that was just what Hetty taught
Hetty
us.
said that constantly.
Oh, it was 100%.
Constantly.
Only boring people get bored.
Right.
Like, and you're not a boring person. Oh, yeah, I'm not.
No, I'm not boring.
Well, yeah, well then, okay.
You shouldn't be bored.
There's no excuse. Or back in the day, it was, well, if you don't like what's served for dinner, you can just have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And that was the rule in our house for growing up, when the kids were growing up. All right, you don't like it, you like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and that's just, okay. And so those are some of the practical ones. But I tell you the thing that has, and this was Hetty. She just had it just came out of her in this way. She called up, and she inspired, and she pulled up, and it was like no matter who she was talking to, she was going to call you up. And it was a totally different way of communication than I had heard or seen to that extent. Right now, you see it in pockets or instances. Obviously, your parents encourage you,
sure,
things like that. But I'm talking like everything all the time called up into something, and it wasn't just a higher standard. It was that there is a higher standard, and you can reach it.
Yeah,
I see it in you. And for somebody to call that out in every single person, and
she would look right at you,
through you somehow. Like it was like, yes, she would look right into the middle of you, and would say, God has called you to greatness, and you are going to be a mighty warrior. And it's like me, but every single person all the time. And what that does to young people is incredible.
It's inspirational. It inspires you.
Yeah, where else would you get that?
Other than family.
Yeah, parents. Yeah, but it's like when you're a kid, you're like, well, they're supposed to love
They
you.
have to.
Yeah, it's like that's
they
their
have
job.
to say I have potential.
Yeah, it's different coming from somebody else.
That's right.
And that's why it's different coming from these counselors.
That's right.
Because they don't have to love you.
That's right.
The fact that they are choosing to because they see something, that's a totally different. Even if the words are the same, it's it comes out differently and it's heard differently when you're younger. I've tried to do that with my kids. I've tried, sometimes more successfully than others, but have tried to be more inspirational. And so that was some of the stuff that I've learned from that has stayed with me for. It's still a part of how I parent. You got, like I said, now my oldest is a counselor, AC. Excuse me.
Yep, our daughters working together.
Yeah, that's incredible to me.
And they went to camp together.
Oh yeah, they always came to camp together. That was amazing. They've known each other for their whole life.
Right. And it's so awkward because as a parent, you want your friends' kids to be friends with your kids, but it doesn't always work out that way.
No,
and
that's okay.
It is okay.
It's fine.
Yeah.
But then when it works out, you're like, that's really cool. I'm really glad.
Yep.
And then I have a son who's graduating this year. Another son who's is going into 7th grade.
Come on.
And then got the
future
the
Brookhiller.
The puppy is right now he's 6, so he'll be coming up in the next couple of years.
Yep.
But camp still informs them and my family in a positive way. And it just feels like this. Like I said, it's just this coming alongside. It's this encouragement. It's these things that expands their community, expands their tribe, in a really positive and helpful way. So love that.
Hey, just thinking of some funny stories. Speaking of Hetty, do you remember when Hetty got on this tangent for orientation, where she was talking about taking the Lord's name in vain? So she took it upon herself to address taking the Lord's name in vain in orientation. Now, why that became a thing, but she would say, no one says Hare Krishna, and then she would use the D word.
Yes.
No one says Mohammed, and she would use the D word.
Yes.
But people say God And then she would always pause. And I guess the pause meant she wasn't putting. But this was in orientation.
I remember it being more like mouthed, like.
Okay,
You know, like,
it was mouthed.
Yeah, so it was
okay.
more like it was like a pause. It was like a that
Yeah.
because she wanted to practice what she
Yeah,
she wasn't going to
yeah.
do it and then say something again.
But I remember going, is this okay?
We okay? Is this all right? Is this okay? Is this something that we're okay? Yes, we
She
are.
had felt led by the Lord to take on that commandment.
I remember that. I remember also orientation talking about and again, this is the same thing.
Yep.
Not writing your name in the bathroom,
Right.
right? Because only people who do that are people who that's where your name belongs. And it was like this.
Oh, yeah.
Gotcha.
Right, right.
Man,
That's
never
right.
thought about that before.
Yeah.
And so it was like, my name doesn't belong. But that's just an example.
Yep.
How you could say, don't write your name in the bathroom.
Right.
And that's the rule, and then you break the rule. And
She was more creative.
it was different.
Yep.
It was not. It was changing the motive. It was changing how you see your name.
Yep.
That changed it. And so now it's not a matter of it not going to the bathroom. Now it's a matter of respecting my name, which is a totally different, lesson.
Right.
And that's a totally different mentality. What else? I remember if you split your pants.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Just air conditioning. She would, and it was that was the same thing.
Yeah.
It was don't be afraid to laugh at yourself. Don't be afraid to be the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
To be funny and to laugh because it's funny.
Right. Right.
And that's
If it was someone else, you'd be laughing.
and then speaking into insecurities in that way. Like don't be so fragile, and pay attention, that you can't laugh when something's funny, but you can enjoy it and have fun. And those little tiny little things, those are incredible.
Do we need anything more than that today? Do we need anything more than don't be so fragile? I mean,
Yeah.
can you laugh at yourself? Everything is we just get hurt,
Yeah.
get hurt.
Yeah. No, it's true. We've being fragile, being afraid to fail, that's a real issue. I think, when we look back in we used to think that the way to have a good self-esteem was to always be encouraged. Mm-hmm. You win or lose, you get the trophy.
Right.
And to a certain extent, that is true. Effort matters.
Right.
And you can't win if you don't show up. So
Right.
showing up matters. But whenever we prevent failure from occurring, then it builds up over time. And you get to the point where you're, 18, 19, 20, and you've never really failed. There's a part of you that knows you can't keep that up. There's a part of you that knows I can't sustain this forever. And the weight of keeping my, my perfect, batting average, the weight I never failed a test, right? I've never done this. The weight of all of that continues to grow because you're not sure what'll happen if you fail. Mm-hmm. And you think, I don't know if I can manage
Because you never have.
Yeah, you don't know how to deal with it. That skill set is not, you haven't had to develop those muscles.
And I think it gets scarier the longer that goes.
Yeah.
It's like falling down as a 2-year-old. If you've never fallen, that gets scarier and scarier.
Yeah.
But when you just kind of fall all the time playing soccer or whatever, you go, it's no big deal to fall.
Yeah.
Because I've fallen before and it didn't hurt that bad.
Right. And I lived. I survived, that failure.
Right.
It didn't overpower me. I was able to navigate it and able to move on. And whenever you don't have that or you haven't developed those skills, failure becomes, and it does become tenuous. We become a little fragile because we're not sure how to deal with failure. We're not sure how to deal with not being, accomplished or the best or meeting expectations or whatever those things are. And so we just struggle with, and kids come up, they're struggling. It's the anxiety, the stuff. It's real and it's heavy. Because we're just not convinced we can keep it up. And I say just the generation that's coming up now. They're not convinced they can keep it up because failure has just not been something that we've understood. So one of the great things that I want to try to do is to have, failure be a part of life. But that's what families are for, right?
Yep.
Is families are a place where you can fail and it not be permanent.
But I think that's something that I feel like you and Rachel have taught Melissa and I.
How to fail? Good. You're welcome.
That too. No. As we talk about parenting, we've had many phone calls where the Rawls and the Pates discuss.
Yes, the FaceTime.
FaceTime.
With us leaning in, talking.
It's the text, hey, Kevin, Lisa and I have a parenting question, or vice versa or whatever.
Yeah.
I think something that you and Rachel have done so well and led the way, and Melissa and I have wanted to emulate is you apologize to your kids. I mean, I'm not saying you walk around and do that all the time, but if you mess up, you say, hey, I want you to know I missed it in this area, and I'm going to work hard to do better.
Yeah.
I remember you and Rachel talking about that y'all do that. Y'all always laugh about it. You're like, we do that on a regular basis. But that was so hard for Melissa and I to hear that, but we were immediately convicted. Because it was nothing that we had ever seen modeled. You make a mistake, you don't talk about it, and you keep going. And I thought that was so good. That y'all do that.
That's awesome. I'm so glad. It didn't originate with us. We had some other people in our lives, some people farther along in the journey than us who talked about that. And it is a bit odd at first to think about that because we tend to think if I apologize, it diminishes my credibility or my position.
Absolutely. That's it. Absolutely. I think that's it.
Yes. And we think my position and my role here is somehow diminished if I acknowledge, that I made a mistake.
I'm not perfect.
And that I'm not perfect and that I've wronged you.
Right.
Reality, though, is that I'm no less the father.
Right.
And the role that I play in the God-ordained and God-given role that I play is no less diminished because I acknowledge my failures to the people that I've wronged. And it's another one of those things like we just talked about earlier. Forgiveness can only take place in community, but so can repentance. Repentance can only take place when you've wronged somebody. And how would you know what it looks like if you've never seen it? And so to model that and say, I messed up, then all of a sudden repentance can become part of the culture of the family.
Wow.
Instead of holding back and unwilling to acknowledge wrong.
Good.
Like I want you to repent to your brother. You wronged him. And here's how you do that. Because I shouldn't have said that. I was wrong for saying that. I apologize. Will you forgive me? Yes. Okay, I'm still the father. I still have a responsibility. You're still the child. You still have a God-ordained responsibility to honor. And none of that's changed simply because I said, I shouldn't have said that. I apologize.
Right.
Will you forgive me? And so it is hard to think about it initially, but then it becomes so freeing as a parent to be like, wow, if I get it wrong, I can go back and try to make it right. And that's great for us. And I hope that we've established a culture of repentance in our family and that it's okay to make a mistake. It was funny whenever my daughter turned 13. I went to her and I said, okay, here's the deal. You've never been 13 before. And I've never had a 13-year-old daughter before.
Fair.
So we're going to have to work through this we're going to give each other a lot of grace. We're going to give each other a lot of space and we're going to communicate. All right? Is 10:30 the right curfew? I don't know. I'm going with that. And if I'm messing you up in life for the future, I apologize, but I've got to go with what God's laid on my heart to be best.
Right.
That's all I can do because ultimately I'm accountable for him. But I'm not saying I have all the answers, that I know exactly what I'm doing. But you still have a responsibility to honor in spite of that. Right? And so it doesn't change the duties and responsibilities that we have. It just opens up and gives us a chance that it's okay to make a mistake. And I'm going to need you to forgive me. And you're going to make a mistake, and you're going to need me to forgive you too. And so it becomes this mutual kind of a relationship where you can start to see them as, somebody that is, when I've wronged you, I'm gonna make it right. And I think when you show that, when you can provide that example, I think it brings a really good culture to the home.
But isn't that the great deception? Like you said, when we're vulnerable and we get to know people, it creates these powerful relationships. Same thing with forgiveness. Okay, but if I apologize, then it's going to make me less in their eyes. But it's actually the opposite.
Isn't that
when someone apologizes, you gain more respect for them. Mm-hmm. When you get to know that someone is imperfect, you gain more respect for them. Mm-hmm. But you could go back to the garden story, mm-hmm. to where we first messed up, and it's always our default to hide. Mm-hmm. It's always our default to cover up. It's always our default to not say, I'm sorry, or to not be real.
Or to blame.
To blame.
This woman you gave me,
right?
That serpent, it's like we don't want it. But the thing is, the kids know that you messed up, and they know. Messed up. They're not dumb.
It's like, yes, finally, thank you. We already knew that.
Yeah, right. And so willing to just acknowledge the truth and acknowledge reality seems like a strength to me.
Yep.
Unwilling to acknowledge reality, unwilling to speak the truth. That doesn't seem like a positive quality that we want to have. So how can I be more, aware and cognizant and truthful of reality?
Good. Speaking of apologies, I remember we had a little rivalry going, basketball rivalry, guys' night.
Yes.
2-week session.
Yeah. No.
I recall having a really good team. Mm-hmm. I had a kid who could dunk. I don't know if you remember that kid. It was crazy. Mm-hmm. And I thought this was my year.
This was the year that what was going to happen?
That the Mustangs were going to beat the Walkers basketball guys.
Because it hadn't happened.
It hadn't happened.
Is that what you're saying?
But
okay.
It was the new era. Uh-huh. Kobe was getting old. Yeah. LeBron was coming on. Uh-huh. I don't know. We're going to go MJ. Kobe's coming on. I don't know what reference we're going there.
Whichever one, I'm MJ. That's the thing. That's the
Okay. And I recall me guarding you, mm-hmm. playing great defense, mm-hmm. locking you up, going for the steal, and then came this Detroit Piston of the 90s dirty elbow, flagrant technical, flagrant 1, flagrant 2, whatever the worst one is, right there, blood coming from my lip, and I'm out for the series. I had to go to the hospital.
Were there stitches involved in
There were stitches involved. It was my first stitch. What a great friendship. You gave me my first stitches into my lip. Ended guys' night, championship game.
Yes, that was
Steve
unfortunate.
Sexton holding my hand in the hospital as I get stitches in my lip.
That was unfortunate. Totally.
I don't know if we ever got an apology for that one.
David, I'm sorry.
That is why I brought you on the podcast.
I'm really sorry that you were reaching in so badly into that play that I inadvertently bumped you.
I just want to know,
broke your face.
Is it okay of the Code of Liberty for the dean to have been that violent?
Oh yeah, like assault. Is that what we're basically?
Yes.
Like, should this be on my record?
That's right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Did they background check you very well? I noticed I wasn't one of your references when you were applying for that job.
I might need an application for employment here. Done. But,
I wanted to share that story. I didn't know if you thought of any stories like that.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I'm trying to think of. I don't remember necessarily a lot of the specific stories like that. I just remember vibes. I remember conversations.
Sure.
I tend to remember in those terms, and that's what comes to my mind. It's just the conversations that we had, and when we would just grow and share and. You're young and you're, 18, 19, 20, 21. You're just trying to figure it out. You're trying to figure it out together.
Yep.
Talking about where we're going to school and what we're going to be studying. I remember conversations with people. I remember, the weekends when we would spend just out having a good time, trying to kind of decompress and be in air conditioning for a few hours.
Yep. Talk about relationships.
Yeah.
I remember, we won't go into details, but I remember the letter that you had gotten. It was a letter. Was it from Rachel?
Oh.
And
Refresh my memory.
Well, you'd gotten a letter from a young lady that you were dating, and we were talking, and that was when Steve Sexton said, I don't think that's the one for you. Here's this friend, you were into this relationship, and Steve goes, I don't think she's the one for you.
What's funny? That seems Steve has that MO, I think, at this point of
It's at least two that I know of.
There's at least two that I'm aware of. He's like, nah, not that one. And
of our friend group.
Oh, yeah, just of our friend group. That's exactly.
He approved of my marriage, but he did not approve of the relationship. No, it's not marriage, but he approved of my relationship.
He was willing to tell me the truth, even if it hurt my feelings. And
that's friendship.
That's invaluable. Like
elbowing someone in basketball is not friendship.
That's speaking friendship. The truth. And if you want somebody to tell you the truth, that's what you need in your life. Is somebody who will tell you the truth in love. I'm not saying this to hurt your feelings. I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm saying this because, man, I love you and I want the best for you. And listen, I could be wrong.
Right.
But I got to say it. And it's got to come out. And so he did. And, thankfully I was, had at least enough wisdom at that point to hear that and to have the Spirit confirm that and go, yeah. You should
it bothered you. I remember you, and not in a I was mad at Steve way. You were like, what am I not seeing?
It was unsettled. It was unsettling.
What am I missing?
Yeah. I was like,
Should I be mad at him, or is this the Lord speaking to me? And the question is, what kind of friends do people want?
Yes, yeah.
What kind of friends? And I know for me, I wanted those kind of friends.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of laughing. Yes, there's a lot of hanging out. Yes, Steve Robert has a lot of memes that he puts in there, and some of them I'm just not smart enough to understand, and I may have to text Kevin and see if you know the meaning. But, but to have the type of friends, I remember one time I put on the group, hey, I need some prayer. And I remember getting 3 phone calls. I think you got to me first, and then Simon had to leave a message. And that's the kind of friends that we have.
Yeah.
Oh, you need prayer? What's going on?
Yeah.
I'm here for you.
Yeah. What do you need?
I mean, what do you want? What kind of friends do we want?
Yes. And
people we can talk about the Yankees about.
Sure.
Let's talk about the Broncos.
Yeah. And we really, we're just afraid. Nobody wants to be the first one to step out. Nobody wants to be the first one to be vulnerable. Nobody wants to be the first to admit that they don't have it all together. But it just goes back to that earlier. Everybody knows it.
Right.
And if you don't, then you haven't started to be honest with yourself yet.
Yep, that's right.
That's stop lying to yourself. Think that you have it all together and that you don't need support and encouragement.
I got a couple of visual aids here.
Okay.
Because this podcast is a big deal. A lot of people listen to it, so I want to help you out.
Thank you.
I want to help you out.
Okay.
Kevin is the author of 2 books.
Oh.
Right here. That's really why you came on the podcast, was to promote your books. I mean, this is such a national audience.
Sure.
I mean, technically, anyone in the nation can listen to this.
Technically.
They don't, but but technically they could.
Yes.
And I love both these books. I'd love you to share just a hair about this. Kevin's a big deal. Do you have the picture? I gotta say this one joke before we go here. The picture of him this last year in his special gown. I've got. Here you're taking a selfie with John Maxwell.
Yes.
I was showing someone this after you sent it to me. I was like, listen, my buddy's a big deal. He's got a selfie with John Maxwell. You know what they said? Who's John Maxwell?
Who's John? Oh, they were less than 25. They were under 25.
They were.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, no. We've crossed the threshold, Kev. We were impressed and no one else was.
We need reading assignments for some of these.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to 25.
That was this graduation last year.
Yep.
So
I love that.
That was before we went out onto they had the deans up on the stage.
And that's your once a year gi or whatever.
Yeah, that's the regalia.
The regalia.
Yes, that we have. There.
I do not own a regalia.
Yes, no, we break it out once a year.
I like it.
During graduation with the hood and the stuff. We were without the hat. It's called a tam.
Okay.
And so we were tamless for this particular event.
I like it.
He was a commencement speaker for this year for graduation, and so I had a chance to say hey to him in the back.
It's so cool.
Before we went out there, but yeah.
Can we throw up the one more picture? The original, the OG Kev, his mug shots here at camp. I found. I remember JD had us do the shots at camp. This right here, from the regalia to this right here.
Wow.
That's something. That is something.
I miss that metabolism.
Yeah.
I miss that.
It's all natural.
A lot. I have no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was not the creative.
You were funny though. I'm sure.
Sure.
All right, let's talk about these books.
It could be worse. It could be worse.
Before
honestly.
we got to go, I love these books. These are mine. Social entrepreneurship. I love your conversation about that. And then a biblical worldview. Gosh, I'm getting so many stats. And we're not talking about just Christians not having a biblical worldview. We're talking about pastors not having a biblical worldview.
Mm-hmm.
These are huge. Can you share just a little bit about these before Tyler steals our cameras from us?
I'll go chronologically.
Okay.
This social entrepreneurship is something that I wrote. So there's a growing business model that is really integrating our conscience and our consumption. And so there's a group of business leaders and entrepreneurs who are starting social enterprises, and the process of that is social entrepreneurship. So this was just a textbook that I wrote for professors, college professors for typically undergrad, to be able to introduce them to the concepts of social entrepreneurship, what it is, what the business model is from a legal standpoint, but also from just nowadays we know so much more about the products that we purchase. We know where they were made. We know the conditions of the factory. We know how much the CEOs are making.
Right.
Probably we know the working conditions of everybody who works in the company. And so whenever we come across these issues that happen in a company, it can create this tension to where it's like, I want to do good things. I don't want to create harm. I don't want to I don't want to make the world worse, but I also need to purchase goods and services. And so we start to see these businesses that are beginning to try to combine these two things, where you can actually purchase goods and services, and you can actually help make the world better, whatever that means. And I go through some of the discussions.
Practically,
about that.
where is the money where's my money going? It's like I'm giving to an organization, which you are. You're getting a product,
but it helps to alleviate that tension that we might feel between our conscience and our consumption.
If I buy a taco, are they using that money to help people? Mm-hmm. If I buy a pair of shoes, they're using that money to help people.
Yeah, you think of like Tom's is probably a good example of that. Tom's is a for-profit company.
That's right.
Where you purchase a shoe, and then they give a shoe away to somebody from a country who doesn't have access to it. And so that type of business model. Now, how do we value the return on investment?
Right.
Social return on investment. That's kind of this emerging, how do we do that? But it's nonprofits that generate revenue and for-profits that have a social mission kind of combined into this area. So this is just exploring that topic from theoretical as well as a practical standpoint.
And I love that because, we've really demonized for-profits today, but there's a lot of for-profits out there using those profits for good.
Yes.
And, bettering people, because you got to have that. The money's got to come from somewhere.
If I have something that I need, you can make it. And,
that's right.
And in that exchange, we can also help another person. That's
a win-win-win.
And we tend to think of it as capitalism is all about
taking.
Maximizing profits.
Right.
And Milton Friedman, that was his that was his focus. And yes, except that that's not necessarily all there is to capitalism. Capitalism is about me having the freedom to make the choice of what I purchase.
Good.
And you having the freedom to meet that demand.
Right.
So we are both mutually free to create something and to help somebody at the same time.
It's good.
And if I agree that that's what I want to do and you agree with that's what you want to do, then we're operating in a capitalist system, but with an intentional focus on helping people outside of this interaction, exclusive this interaction. So I think it's an emerging business model. It's shown stability. The term's been around for over 20 plus years, and we see these businesses starting to grow. I don't think we can move. I think businesses are starting to move more towards this than away from it.
I agree.
And so I think this is just a good
We're
kind
trying
of
to do a lot of this here at Brookhill for sure.
And then this is
last one
we
right
just
here.
Finished.
Tyler's getting antsy.
So this is Foundations of Biblical Worldview. This is basically describing the 6 constructs that form the foundation of a biblical worldview.
Come on.
So it's not just what do I think about this particular social issue that determines my biblical worldview or not.
Right.
Do I think the one I would use would be capital punishment.
Okay.
Do I think capital punishment is right or wrong? Say yes or no. but how I answer that is not as important as how I got to that answer.
Great.
Right? So this digs way down to the fundamental presuppositions about reality, about the origins of the universe, about the potential futures of the universe, values, actions, and then how we discover truth. So this actually wants to dig down to these fundamental levels that we're not just going to say, oh, well, if you don't, if you think of this particular thing about abortion, then you immediately have a biblical worldview. No, you could have a naturalistic and a biblical worldview agree on something, but for totally different reasons.
Come on.
So it's not necessarily these expressions out here, these socialists. It's much more deep, much deeper, much more fundamental. And so this is describing those 6 constructs. And I'd actually created a test called the Biblical Worldview Indicator, which is an assessment that can be used to determine those 6 constructs and scores in those 6 constructs. And that's part of this book. And so I'm going to start to pull this out into different disciplines.
Yep.
So working this out into, it's already used right now at in some psychology classes at Liberty.
Some high schools using it?
Yes. The indicator. Yes. The book just came out.
Okay.
So like a couple of months ago, and so it's going to.
I got a pre-release copy.
You did. So I think that's really something
that.
really beneficial. I like the approach that we take. I think it's unique, and I think it's.
Where could somebody find these books?
Those are both offered at Kendall Hunt is my publisher.
Okay.
So they're both offered at Kendall Hunt. I think it's like KendallHunt.com, or they could do a search for that, Kendall Hunt Publishing, and in the higher ed section of them, they can just search for my last name.
All right. You're not going to be able to keep these on the shelves, promise.
Well, I hope they're
We have a national
beneficial.
audience.
I hope they're beneficial and
There's
valuable.
people in California,
to people.
Virginia, New York that listen. My 3 friends. Hey.
That's right.
Kev, appreciate having you on.
Oh, thanks
I
so
love
much.
our
Wonderful.
interesting conversations.
You're the best,
Love us
buddy.
hanging
Thank
out,
you.
and still waiting on that apology. So Tyler needs this camera. All right. We'll see y'all. Thanks for listening. So much fun.